I stopped by the headquarters of Jupiter, some of my favorite all-time developers. This was incredible. This was probably the highlight of the entire trip for me. I think this is the most David thing you could possibly do in Japan. Was basically as soon as I got to Japan, I just went to the website of Jupiter. If you don't know, Jupiter makes the Picross games. I went to their website. I found a Ask Us a Question email link, and I wrote them an email being like, hey, I know this is probably really weird, and I'm sorry I don't speak Japanese. I'm from the US. I'm going to be in Kyoto. I brought a copy of Picross 2 for the Game Boy. I would be honored if someone from your team would sign it. And much to my surprise, multiple days later, they were like, we do not get many requests like this. we would love if you came by our office. Also, hi, this is Meguro. I am the producer of Picross. And so that was crazy. He just wrote me straight up. He said, I'm sorry, I don't speak English, so we're going to need someone to translate, but they got someone from the staff to translate. So, I get off the bus, I walk to Jupiter headquarters, and I get up there, and Meguru-san is just sitting there in the open room, ready to meet me. And I met him. I met the director and kind of like creator of Logiart Grimoire, which is the new kind of Picross spinoff that they've made for Steam and on Switch. And then I also sat with one of the other members of their staff who was translating the entire thing. And we went to a boardroom and we just sat and we talked for like an hour. And they just sat and talked with me for a really long time. And I had written something in advance. I'm not going to read it here, but it was like, I wrote this like page long thing of just like how I thought Picross was music and they are conductors, and a Picross puzzle is a beautiful symphony and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, just completely wrote like some poetry, essentially being like talking about how much Picross means to me and how other people try to make Picross puzzles, but they don't do it as well as you guys do. And you guys are beautiful, amazing artists and all this kind of stuff. And I was just basically just slobbing their knob, like telling them how much I love Picross. And I thought that was going to be it. And I thought I was just going to say that and then give him my game and have him sign it, and then that would be that. But then Meguro pulls out this giant binder and sets it on the table, and it's like 500 pages, and it's all these original documentation on like the creation of like the original Picross for the Game Boy, Mario's Picross for the Super Nintendo, Picross 2, Pokemon Picross, the canceled game. He had all these pages of original design documents and all these like handwritten notes that were faxed to Jupiter from Shigeru Miyamoto, and telex to them, like being like, hey, here's ways that you could like make this more interesting. What if you brought Mario into the game? Like, what if you did all this kind of stuff? And he's just going through this like oral history of Picross with me. And I felt so honored to be able to see this kind of stuff. This is like an unprecedented amount of access that people like, you'll never get to see, right?
I mean, history, dude.
Yeah, it's history right there. And Meguro has been at Jupiter for like 30 years, making these games from the very beginning, right? And Jupiter has been making the Picross games since like the beginning of the Game Boy, right? So it was so much history there. It was incredible to see. There was a couple of funny moments too, because Picross 2 and Pokemon Picross share a lot of the same mechanics beyond just being Picross games. And I brought that up. I'm like, oh yeah, Pokemon Picross uses the same quadrant system that Picross 2 has. And he goes, how have you played Pokemon Picross? That game never released. He's like, did you play it in the leak? And from the Giga Leak? And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. We like had a big laugh about that. And I was like, dog, I don't think you understand. Like I've played every Picross game.
Whoopsie.
Yeah. But it was funny. And there were multiple things. He's like, shh, don't tell anyone about that. That's a secret. Like when it comes to like Pokemon Picross and like why it was canceled and a couple other things as well. Like there was lots of things that I won't repeat here out of respect to the company. But yeah, it was a really amazing time. And then at the very end, I pulled out my game and then they all laughed and they were like, oh yeah, that's why you came here. And and I had them sign the game. I've got it down here. Yeah, I went back to Super Potato and bought Game Boy, Super Game Boy protective boxes, just so I could put it in there. But you can see Meguro-san signed my copy of the game right here, and I left with it. Magical experience. I'll never forget that day. Probably one of the top 10 experiences of my life. They say never meet your heroes. I disagree as long as your heroes are the creators of Picross.
David, I think there's like a huge life lesson for me and like a lot of people in this, which is like ask.
Ooh.
Just shoot the
Like,
shot. Yeah.
like, I mean, obviously, like if you're like a Nintendo fan and you want to ask Nintendo, like that's not gonna happen. But like to you know what I mean? Like, man, there's so many other smaller but still big things like that. Man, incredible. I'm so inspired by that story. Really,
I'm really amazed. And I mean, it's also, I think it was also really nice for them because it's not like there's a bunch of like diehard Picross fans out there like beating at the doors of Jupiter HQ trying to get in. You know what I mean? Like it's not a flashy franchise, Picross. You know, it's a long-standing franchise with diehard fans, but it's like I think it was nice for them to like see somebody who actually like really truly loves the work that they do. You know, at least that's the vibe I got. It felt like
I'm sure.
Yeah. And so I think we all left with a big smile on our face and all felt really good about the entire thing. And yeah, you're right, Patrick. I mean, I think it's something I've gotten better at over the course of doing this podcast. It's just like cold calling
better
people.
Than me. Yeah.
Yeah. That is true. But I mean, it's not hard to do. You just write a message, and the worst thing that can happen is they don't ever respond. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's it. You know, and then if they do respond and they're like, "No, I don't have time," then hey, at least you got to talk to somebody that you admire, if not just like for a brief moment. You know, but then so often people just say, "Yeah, I'll do your podcast," or like, "Yeah, I'll meet you." Like, who cares? Like. I do worry that Japanese people just don't like to say no, and I kind of pressured them into meeting with me. But
until he pulled the binder out.
yeah, exactly.
I think that told you that this
Yeah.
was like a welcome experience for everyone.
Yeah, it was a pretty incredible time. There's so much more I could say about that, but I'll save it for maybe a future Picross episode. Yeah. And then we got some like food at this place. Anyway. Okay. So then that was that day.